smart.
This is a video response to Doreen Virtue and her video, which we shall watch together, regarding why Doreen Virtue stopped using angel cards. Now, as you may know, she converted to Christianity, and she's going to use Christianity as her reason why she stopped using angel cards. Even though any spiritualist would be able to say why she's mistaken or why they could say their way is right, and any atheist could say, well, what about, this passage which says that, women shouldn't teach, men, or shouldn't teach anyone. That women shouldn't be in positions of power. We ignore those verses, but she'll pick on a couple of verses, or I think it's a verse from Deuteronomy, regarding why she thinks she shouldn't have done the angel cards. So, yeah.
Hi, my friend. It's Doreen, and this is Cherub. Some of you remember her when we got her from the Humane Society a couple of years ago. And I wanted to talk with you because a lot of people still ask why I stopped using angel cards. And in case you haven't heard, I had a big experience, January 7th, 2017, that led me to read the whole Bible. And now I read the Bible every day and study it every day. And
well, that's one thing to do. I mean, reading the whole Bible, if you took it seriously and you studied it, you'd realise how much crap is actually in there. But there's a lot of stuff which can be interpreted in certain ways, depending on your translation.
I just wanted to read you the passage that just stopped everything for me, changed everything. It's from Deuteronomy, chapter 18, verse 10b. And so I'm going to read it from the New Living Translation. I have all the, King James, New King James, the ESV, all the translations up here in English. And they all say the same thing. It says, "And do not let your people practice fortune-telling, or use sorcery, or interpret omens, or engage in witchcraft."
Well, that's bullshit for a start. Early Christians used to have seers. Yeah. Even when they put together the Bible, they collected the books, those which people were reading, listening to, accepting across Christendom. They still had seers. You go back further, you go to when there was St. Constantine, Emperor Constantine. He had seers tell prophecy of how he could win favour with God and how the battles would go, allegedly. In terms of the prophecies made by Jesus, if anything, Jesus was a medium. And the acts he did, in any other context, we'd call that sorcery. But because it's the Christian religion, we term it differently and say, no, it's not magic, it's God energy. God magic? No, you can't say that. No. So it's how people interpret these words. And, the idea of things like, sorcerers, witches, mediums, etc. You go back to the original terms, they're talking about slightly different things. And a lot of the modern translations, the new modern, very often American translations, they're actually heavily distorted from their previous meaning. In actuality, I should mention that a good example of how words can change meaning. The Virgin Mary. Virgin is not used in any text early on. The early terms used in the stories were in fact referring to a maid. A word for maid, which can mean virgin, can just mean young woman, was used. Should we then assume, or presume, that the Virgin Mary was not a virgin? That's up to you.
Or cast spells or function as mediums or psychics. That's what I...
They didn't have the word psychic, which is taken, it's taken from the Greek, that's true. But these words were not really heavily used. The modern translation of the Bible adds these words in. They talk of sorcerers, seers. They might mention the word oracle. I can't remember that being used in the Bible, but it's been a long time since I've read a Bible. Personally, I would go back to the King James. The modernisation of terms changes the meaning considerably. That's why so many people have a disagreement with some of these modern translations. It's also one of the reasons why different sects of Christianity, including the Jehovah's Witnesses, have their own Bibles, which they believe are more true to the original sentiments of those Greek texts, the not quite original Gospels and other books of the New Testament, but as close as you can get to originals, early copies.
Is doing, or call forth the spirits of the dead.
Now, you've said it yourself, because I know you have. So have people around you. People in the spiritual movement, they don't claim to call up the dead. What do they claim? They claim that the dead come to them. You don't call forth Uncle Fred, or you don't call forth, anyone. If anyone is here, let them make themselves known. That's what mediums do. They go with who's there, or typically with a spirit guide, who in many cases will appear as an angel, or a person from a tribal culture from somewhere in the world, a Native American perhaps. So I don't think that changes anything, really. So calling up the dead, no, they're not the necromancers of a couple of, or a few centuries ago. They're people who claim to get messages from the deceased, the physically dead. And yeah, I think you can confuse these things. I don't agree with what they say. I don't think they communicate with those people, those beings. But I don't think that your translation, and indeed interpretation, of the Bible is technically correct, nor objectively true. And I would say that you can take the Bible in a number of ways. Focusing on this text is simply a way of you saying, this is why. And if you wish to do that, that's fine. But your spiritual kin, or former kin, your friends or former friends, they would disagree with you and have good reasons to do so. And I don't see any reason why the Bible should be your bias anyway. Or anyone's bias. Except those people who, I suppose, like yourself, have converted to the Christian faith.
Anyone who does these things is detestable to the Lord. And
well, God should make his mind known in a better way. Christianity has a problem, test of faith. These things are true. How do you know? It's a matter of faith. You will be rewarded. No reason to believe in it. And there are many different interpretations, but once again, you will be rewarded. And many modern Christians, modern sects, they don't believe in that stuff anyway. They recognise where it comes from the dogmas of human philosophy, as opposed to divine truth. So, in that way, the interpreted view with your mistranslated modern Bible, I wouldn't say it's necessarily the case. And if you say it is, you have to interpret it into those terms. Oh, psychics, mediums, etc. Calling up the dead, even if people claim not to. Yeah, you're detestable.
I don't want to do anything detestable to the Lord.
And you're suggesting by your implication that your friends and former friends, who are still in the spiritual movement, are by definition detestable.
So I stopped using the cards at that point. I also realized that I had been using the cards instead of turning to God. Proverbs 3:5 and also Moses' law says that we are to trust in the Lord with all of our heart, all of our soul, all of our strength, and all of our mind. And we're to turn to him, to trust him with our future, not try to predict or control the future.
Well, you weren't predicting or controlling anything. In fact, prediction isn't a problem. False prophecy and false prophets are, according to the Bible. But yeah, predicting things is fine. You predict what shares are going to do on the stock market. You predict how well your book is going to do when you try and sell it. You predict how your health is going to be 20 years from now. Do you need to save? Do you need to invest? Do you need to have special medical, care in the future? These things are worth consideration. Predicting, if you will. It's not prophecy. It's not set in stone. As far as the cards, you know perfectly well they're a psychological tool. They're not even like tarot cards. Tarot cards are a form of fortune telling. They don't really predict the future, nor do they detect the present, nor read the past. With angel cards, you get a nice message and a nice image. That's it. People feel good about it. It has a psychological benefit, which, let's be honest, Doreen, because of your many years in psychology and psychotherapy, is the reason why you designed them as they are and as they were. Even if you don't use them now, well, you're the one who put them together as a psychological idea. They're not meant to actually tell the future anyway. They can't. They can make people feel good about it, though, and that's not a bad thing. So once you understand that, her argument is self-defeating. She's just trying to warm herself up to the Christian community that she fell in with, after making many millions of New Agers, the spiritual movement, through these psychological tools.
So I threw out all my angel cards and other kind of cards, even cards published by Christian publishers. I don't have any cards now. I know some people still want to use them. I just want to let you know I'm not judging anybody.
Yeah, you are. It's either detestable to God or it's not. If you think it is, that means you think those people who are still using them must be on some level, at least potentially, detestable in the eyes of God. That's what the logic suggests. And so what if you throw out your cards? You've made your money off them now, and now to fall in line with friends and family who've probably been judging you quite harshly over the years, fall in with your community, what are you going to do? Well, become a nice little Christian. Kind of not quite disappear completely off the radar, but you didn't give people the refunds, which they're meant to be after. You know, for some of your courses, like fairy courses. You just changed your act quite quickly. Backed out. You know, sack of money over your shoulder. And now you're selling books to Christians, which are now selling quite well. Initially, there was a blip. And you had to live off your savings, I'm sure. Changing a lot of things, no doubt. Now it's recovering. And you're selling to a far bigger market than you ever have before.
I love you. I'm coming to you as a sister to tell you what's going on with me in case you're also being called by Jesus to follow him. If you're being called to read the whole Bible, I recommend it. And if you'd like to read more about my story, I'll give you my new book for free. It's called The Joy of Jesus, and I'll put the link in the profile of this YouTube video. And it's...
Free book? Well, that was back then. I dare say there was only so many in circulation, so many available at the time. And she has since, as I said, developed this new Christian book publishing into a business form. She's no longer connected to the kind of New Age spiritual booksellers. Her material is still in circulation to some degree, which you would expect, even now. And the fact that, you know, she's still making revenue off it, it's pretty bizarre to me. And her arguments don't seem to be very strong. I know it's only a 2-minute video, and I've already spent like about 13, 14 minutes, you know, watching and responding to it. But it seems to me her argument is quite weak. And I won't be watching this hour and 34-minute video. Doreen Virtue frequently asked questions. I don't think so. I think I'll be happy enough with doing a video that is far less than that. Simply because I don't think this woman had any answers to begin with. I think many of you were duped. I think many of you were conned by this woman. And really, people should be thinking twice about who they listen to, why they listen to them, when they're basically talking about things that have sometimes a psychological benefit, but really have no great deep benefit to your life other than the belief that something good could or will happen if you accept certain ideas. Like if you imagine a certain angel is with you, you give a certain aspect of your self-agency and things around you some kind of agency, which might otherwise not help you in some way. So having the idea there can be beneficial. But to be honest, I just don't think it's necessary. I think if you learn to develop truly in terms of your psychological makeup, you'll gain far more benefit than being invested in a belief system, and that includes Doreen Virtue's angel cards, or even her Christian books, which are supposedly still feel good and psychologically beneficial, but she simply changed audience to a far bigger pool of credulity.
What the fuck is wrong with you?